Hello and welcome to the webinar, Artificial Intelligence, Rhetoric and Reality. This is a webinar brought to you by AIA Contract Documents. So thank you very much for joining us. We're going to get started with a few administrative items before I turn it over to the presenters to provide this webinar. So first and foremost, this presentation is protected by US and international copyright laws. So reproduction, distribution, display without written permission is prohibited. Also, this presentation, as well as any presentations provided by AIA contract documents, are for general informational purposes only. So that's important for everybody to understand. So it's just for content and informational. It's not meant as legal advice in any way. This course is also eligible for one learning unit. When you registered for this course, you entered your AIA member ID, if applicable, in the registration page. We will use that information to report your credit. Please give us 2 business weeks in order to do that. So before I turn it over to our presenters, I just wanted to provide a little bit of introduction into this exciting topic that we're going to be discussing today. So AI is, of course, first and foremost on everyone's mind. We've seen the news, we've seen it trending on social media. A lot of us, as we observe this emerging technology, we start thinking about how it's going to impact us, how it impacts society, how it's going to impact the construction industry, how it impacts our jobs. So certainly there's a level of excitement about the data and the analytics and what it can provide us for more efficient processes and benchmarking in our industry and all sorts of things. But there's probably also a level of anxiety that everybody feels on how it will impact our processes, our jobs, our industry. So luckily for us, we've got 2 data science experts who are going to be talking to us today, specifically about how AI is going to impact contract management, which is, of course, our business at AIA Contract Documents. So certainly in the next hour, we're not going to be able to answer all of your questions, but hopefully we are able to dispel some of the misconceptions and myths that you may have, some of the anxieties you may have, and then also introduce maybe some of the ways that AI can impact your business in terms of your contract administration, document management, data analytics and benchmarking to other businesses in the industry. So there's a lot of exciting opportunity here. So we're very excited. Please use the chat to ask any questions throughout the presentation. I will moderate questions and we'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can at the end of the presentation as well as throughout the presentation. I'm also going to link for you a white paper that our presenters have drafted on this very topic that's also available on our website, on our Learn page. So I'll link to that in the chat. This session is going to be recorded. You will receive the recording as well as the white paper via email by close of business tomorrow, so look forward to that. And with that, we look forward to answering your questions and having a lively dialogue on this exciting topic. So with that, Tim, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself and get started.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Hasti. Again, my name is Tim Duggan. I'm the Vice President of Data Science here at ACD Contract Documents. I've been in the construction data information business for over 30 years. We'll leave it at that. And utilizing construction data to help in the industry in finding the right jobs, defining materials and value opportunity, to analyze comparative markets, evaluate transit activity, forecast cost in firms such as the evolution of Construct Connect, some of the firms you may have heard of that I've worked with, Construct Connect, RS Means, Gordian, and now ACD. I use my mechanical engineering degree and my subject matter experience to help join with Sandra, who you're going to meet next, as to help people understand what's going on in the industry from a data perspective and how it can help you do your job better. It is definitely not something that's going to replace anything that anybody's doing. It's going to make you smarter and more efficient. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sandra. Sandra.
Hi, my name is Sandra Hendren. I am have my training is in statistics and actually statistical computing more than 3 decades ago as well. I have worked in lots of industries, but I've worked in the construction industry and specifically with Tim, off and on for more than 10 years, maybe close to 15, or Tim, I forgot how long, but he and I are quite the team now, and we really love our work. I have been doing analytics mostly in healthcare before starting to work with Tim and this team and the Gordon Group RS Means before this. I have learned to love the construction industry. It's very interesting. I'm thrilled to be part of this new opportunity, which is using AI for construction contracts. Here's our agenda for today, and I would like to get through the first 2 sections first, and then we will stop and answer any questions that Hasti has received thus far, or take questions from the audience as much as we can. Because the first 2 sections is to give you the basic groundwork. Enough about all of this stuff in the media, much of which is highly exaggerated, if not blatantly untrue. So that's the purpose of the first 2 sections. The third section is one of my favorite. It's to look at the common misrepresentations in the media and balance that with what is reality about that misconception. And then we will take a few more questions, I believe is how we've decided to do this. Then we will go into the benefits of AI for construction contracts. I will be doing the first 3 sections largely and be passing to Tim during the middle of the 4th section. Okay, artificial intelligence is nothing more than a special kind of machine learning. So first, I want to define what is machine learning. It's a family of statistical techniques, about 35 to 55, depending upon how you count them. And these techniques read one observation at a time and modifies the machine learning algorithm. In other words, it learns with each additional record. Now, this is completely different from statistics as I learned it all those decades ago, classical statistics, where you read an entire data set and you aggregate that data set and you typically compute some statistics, either descriptive and or predictive, and then you look to see how that one group in your data is different from another group. That's not what machine learning does. And I know it sounds kind of odd that machine learning does this without being explicitly programmed, but it really is the truth. And it really does read one record at a time and changes the algorithm with each new record. It's modifying, it's improving the algorithm. Clustering is one such machine learning technique. It's been around for 20 years, maybe 30 years. We didn't call it machine learning then because it wasn't in the popular press. But here's an example of clustering where I analyzed some data, what food people ate at different times of day. And look, they clustered really nicely. Coffee and bagels in the morning, on Saturday afternoons, children's menus, etc. And the company used this to target promotions specifically to each one of those 4 clusters. It's been used in marketing for 20 years, 30 years, maybe longer. If you have ever gotten credit, I guarantee you the creditor used a decision tree. It's another very popular type of machine learning where it takes certain information, in this case your investment or the amount of money you're requesting, and it splits it in 2, and then it splits those 2 into 2 again, and those 2 and those 2 and those 2, until it gets to an answer. And the answer, you would fall into one of those categories and get your credit or not. So AI is nothing more than more compute-intensive, more advanced machine learning. It typically has much more data, The data is much more complex, and it is named artificial intelligence, not because it is intelligent. You wouldn't know that from the media, would you? But because it simulates human intelligence. Specifically, you've probably heard of an artificial neural net, deep learning. Some people call it a convoluted neural net. Who said data scientists didn't have a sense of humor, huh? And this is how it works. This is very organized, but a human brain has neurons, and artificial intelligence also has multiple neurons. The input layer is your data. It does something with that data, passes it to the three little dots. It does something else with that data, passes it, until finally there is an output. The underlying principle of both artificial intelligence and human intelligence, machine learning and human learning, is really very basic. It is pattern recognition. They are both doing nothing more than building in their brain, if you're the human, or in the machine, if it's machine learning, artificial intelligence, a pattern like this. That's a very complicated pattern in this case. And it's a very complicated pattern in your head as well. But it's nothing more than what you do with a child when you're teaching a child to talk. So that each one of those little dots is a neuron in your brain or in the computer, and the connections between those little dots are relationships, patterns. So it really is quite basic. And whether you're aware of it or not, you probably are, you have been using AI for decades. I mean, the original use of AI, a very elementary level, was search engines. And if you've ever noticed, when you go to a search engine and you start typing something in, it will start populating below there with, do you mean the first two words and a third word, a variety of words, and a fourth and a fifth and a sixth. That's how machine learning, that's how AI works. It's simple probability. That search engine has counted the number of times people have entered those first two words, and then the third word that it generates is the most frequent occurrence of what people have typed in before. And that is the basic principle of all AI, as a matter of fact. Smartphones, you know about autocorrect, which many times is called auto miscorrect. That means that the machine learning, the AI algorithm didn't do a very good job in general, or at least this time. And every Amazon shopper knows about recommendation engines. They're all everyday uses of AI that has been around for a long time.
Hey, Sandra.
Yeah.
Just jump in. I just wanted to say here, I just took a trip, and my favorite AI-backed technology is a navigation system. And the new one, the Wazes of the world, they actually evaluate all of the data of all of the people that are on the road, and how fast they're going and where they're going, so that they can redirect you in flight. So it's real time, helping you out to do that. And that's really what AI is. Just takes all this data and turns it into something to make you more efficient, faster to get to where you want to go, by telling you, wait a minute, there's an accident and you need to go around, because this is going to be shorter than the way you go. So it's a very good use of AI.
Great example, Tim. And it's always the same principle, no matter how elementary or how sophisticated it is. Looks for patterns, and then it tells you, in this case, which road to use based upon the most frequent feedback it has about there's an accident here, etc. Great example. Thanks, Tim. I'm certain you've been reading, we've all been reading about the most recent craze. It's called ChatGPT, also known as generative AI. ChatGPT, first of all, boy, it's a mouthful, stands for Chatbot Generative Pre-trained Transformer. And you may have seen these words. It's an LLM, which simply means a large language AI model. First of all, because I think it's pretty impressive, let's look at ChatGPT by the numbers. It took 7 years to develop, to the point where you saw it was released, current release in November. 13 billion, more than $13 billion in investment. That's the amount that is known. There are also private investors, and we don't know how much money they put into it. Each training run cost about $12 million because a training run is scraping the internet. It's reading everything, essentially, on the internet and digesting it and putting it into the machine and building that pattern that you saw a couple of slides ago. Has this 175 billion variables. That slide you just saw a few slides. Imagine 175 billion of those dots and untold number of connections between the 175 billion. It could be as many as 175 billion to permutation, which is just astronomical, okay? That's why it's good. And first of all, I want to say, I think it's amazing. And I'm a tough sell. I'm a critic because I know how this is done. and I know how many bad products and bad uses, meaning poorly performing, when I say bad, has come out in the past. I'm a hard sell, but I think it is amazing. And I joked with Tim when it first came out, was first hit the press. I said, hey, Tim, if we had 7 years and $13 billion, that we could do that too. I mean, it's very expensive because it costs a lot to ingest all this data and to form these patterns. Now, I want to emphasize that last bullet for a minute. It was trained by ingesting all this text data. I should be specific, text data in general. But it was then additionally trained by human beings, meaning, and if you read the whole history of this, it's really quite amusing. It was a Hail Mary. The ChatGPT was not performing well, and they said, oh, well, let's get some human beings to train it. And so human beings, and they're entire companies now, by the way. They're called annotation companies because they tag, they annotate the data. So they would get ChatGPT to respond to a request. And if it was good, the human being would say, yeah, that's good. Okay, if it was not very good, the human being say, no, it's not very good, and this is what's wrong, this phrase, this word, etc. And almost all generative AI and or AI, generative or not, okay, like you'll soon learn, what we're doing at Katina has a human element to it. And the trick, it's not a trick, the integrity is to get those human beings that are doing the annotation to be smart human beings, to be subject matter experts, as we are doing. So I just want to emphasize that because it's not known. The impression is that it's this huge machine doing these magnificent things. It's only as good as the training data that the humans create, and the human annotation and reinforcement learning is what they call it, perhaps because they don't want you to know that there are human beings sitting behind it. I don't know. I'm just saying, reinforcement learning. And it's really good. Like I said, I am stunned. I did not think I would live long enough to see something that was this good, particularly at a verbal request. I have played with it. I'm stunned. It's very good at poetry, okay? It's very good at generating software code. It's really good because it doesn't forget anything ever, and it does not get tired like human beings do. But it's also bad at some things, okay? Math. I have read a lot of reviews of it. It just doesn't do math very well. It cannot do logic questions. I tried to trick it, the last two, or what I did, with something physical. Instead of something in your brain, something illogical, intelligent, like poetry, etc., or software code. I asked it to teach me the difference in writing a thoroughbred and a warm blood. I've written both. There are big differences. It was clear that it had read a lot about how to do it, but it couldn't really say what to do. And then it was a total failure on how to play a piano. It told me to go read a book on how to learn sheet music. So there are things it's good at and it is bad at, for certain. Just to continue the discussion a little bit, the current challenges with ChatGPT are latency of knowledge. It hasn't had any training runs, maybe because they're very expensive, since 2021. In use, if you wanted to use it for a customer service chat or something, it's unclear to this date how how much computational power it would take. It is open source code. I should emphasize that. And you can go online and download the code or build some little apps, okay, with it. But it's not been tested yet in enough applications to know, do I have enough compute power behind what it's saying for it to be reasonable. The biggest problem that I have with it is that it gives technically correct responses, but they are not relevant in context. They do not have understanding. Here's another big problem that people found: horribly, disgustingly discriminatory responses. How does that happen? And it's not just ChatGPT, lots of AI. For instance, AI is used for facial recognition, for security systems. And the first facial recognition systems that came out would not admit people of color. It was horribly discriminatory. Why? Because they had not trained the AI on people of color, faces that were people of color. So it did not know any better. It was stupid about that. That is also what people are finding with ChatGPT. And I love this one. It's going to have hallucinations. That's the word people use. What it means is it lies, okay? It makes stuff up. And why does it make stuff up? Because, go back to that slide with all the patterns and the nodes, there are some missing patterns there, or some missing connections there. Or the connections are not quite right, okay? So it is doing what it was trained to do, but it was not trained sufficiently for something that you've asked it when it lies. The risks are that you don't know when it lies. You don't know when it makes mistakes. The biggest risk that I saw playing around with it a little bit is errors of omission. In fact, here at AIA contract documents, we asked it to write several construction contracts for us. And once again, I was amazed. I was blown away at how good a job it did, in as much as it was coherent, it was fluent, I could understand it, but the errors of omission were overwhelming. It was incomplete. I would never sign a contract like that. We tried it several times, and we kept getting contracts that were about a page long. And what it said was correct, but it was nowhere in the depth to risk your business on it. And of course, there's the issue of plagiarism. Some countries, Italy, have initially banned ChatGPT altogether. I think they're reconsidering now, but some countries have banned it because of the concerns about cyber attacks and generative malware. In short, if you go on site and you look and you log on, the creators of ChatGPT themselves are quite clear. Look at the column called limitations. May occasionally, and the issue is occasionally, how often is occasion? Is it with this contract? Is it with something important? Is it with my diagnosis? May occasionally generate incorrect information. May occasionally produce harmful instructions or biased content. And limited knowledge of the world after 2021, that's because they haven't trained it since then. In other words, the CEO, Sam Altman, a direct quote in an interview with him is, it's impressive, but not robust. Robust meaning it's not always accurate. It sometimes has hallucinations, lies, etc. What's driving this craze? What's been driving all technology crazes ever since the internet craze, ever since the tulip craze? There's a great book called It's Different This Time, okay? And it talks about all the crazes, all the bubbles, market bubbles in the world. And it started with the tulip craze in the Netherlands in, are you ready? 1634. So everyone gets excited about a new technology, or in this case, a particular bulb or a handful of tulip bulbs. Of course, there's the real estate craze in 2018, et cetera. It's the continuous need to innovate, powered by a lot more compute power and a lot more data we've got now. Okay, I think it's time for some questions. Hasti, are you there? Have we received questions?
Here. So again, a reminder to attendees to enter any questions in the chat. So you mentioned, Sandra, that AI is not as smart as a 5-year-old. How long do you think it'll be before AI is? And when are they going to update it again after 2021?
Before ChatGPT, I would have said 50 to 75 years. After ChatGPT, because it is impressive, I'll say 10 years, minimum of 10 years, maybe more. And if I can expand upon that just a little bit, there was an educator in the 50s. His last name was Bloom, and he created a taxonomy of knowledge, of learning, okay? And ChatGPT and AI in general, there are 6 levels. The lowest level is knowledge. ChatGPT, it knocks it out of the park on knowledge, okay? It has lots of knowledge. Comprehension, it comprehends better than I ever thought in my lifetime I would see. Meaning, you ask it a question, it understands the question, comprehends the question, and it can relate that question to its body of knowledge. That's level 1 and 2. The third level is applying that knowledge. It's rudimentary at applying knowledge, but it's not in depth. Like I said, I wouldn't sign a construction contract that it wrote. And the top 3 levels of learning is analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. It's not very good at analysis. That's why it's bad at math. That's why it's bad at logic. So it conquers those lower levels of intelligence very well. But the higher synthesis, that's where it really starts falling apart. Because by synthesis, it means that Tim learns something in college, that he then learns something in graduate school, that he then learned something else on the job, and then he learned, and he put them all together in a unique way. He synthesized them. It is not good at that. Likewise, it is not good at evaluating new ideas. AI, and I said this once, caused quite a controversy. I apologize in advance. I don't want to cause a controversy, but I said once at a former job, I cannot predict anything that has never occurred in the data. Let me repeat that. You cannot predict anything. You cannot classify. You cannot evaluate. You cannot synthesize anything that has never occurred in the data, meaning artificial intelligence, machine learning. But Tim can. Why can Tim do it? Because he's a human. He is pretty good. And the older you get, up to a certain age, the older you get, the better you are at that. Why? Because you've got more and more experience. You've had more of these aberrant experiences that you can now put together in a unique way. If you read the study, back to the study, it was Stanford University, 2 years. Only in academia do you have 2 years of money to do a study on artificial intelligence. In this case, it's not as smart as a 5-year-old, meaning a 5-year-old is already exhibiting synthesis, those higher level and evaluation. Yeah, sometimes not very good. If you remember Art Linkletter's, what was it? Kids Say the Darndest Things. They have synthesized things incorrectly, and they're pretty funny, okay? But logically, they make sense, but from an experience, a context sense, they don't make sense. I'll quit talking now. I got excited about that question.
Oh, and we've got a lot of questions coming
Okay.
in. And again, just a reminder that we're not going to be able to solve, everybody's questions about this topic. And at a certain point, Tim and Sandra, please let me know when we do need to move on, just because of the content matter that we want to talk about today. But the questions are coming in fast and furious. So, someone is reiterating what you said, and I think this is true. Essentially, what Sandra is saying is that AI cannot create anything new on its own. It can only retell what has been already been told. Someone asked a very interesting question. Like a child, is it subject to the morality of the parent? And this is where I think the
I want to be
anxiety
certain.
spike. 'Cause
Say it again.
like a child, is it subject to the morality of the parent?
Oh, is it subject to the morality of the parent?
Can
Well,
it be
it is.
manipulated in any way? I think is maybe what the
Okay,
question is asking.
but it was so beautifully stated. Let's
I
go with the
know.
first one. Hosty, I like that. Is it subject to the morality? It is subject to the intelligence of the parent. Because if you train a child to discriminate against certain groups, he, she will discriminate against certain groups, okay? And the child discriminates against certain groups because he or she doesn't know any better. So likewise, let's go back, the morality, my opinion, morality is related to intelligence. And so in that aspect, yes, because an immoral person is likely to teach the child bad things. And if we have a training data set that teaches that, it's discriminatory against people of color or women or people in Asia, yeah. Did I answer the question? I talked a lot about it.
This is where the anxiety spikes. There's so many opportunities, but there's also things we're uncertain about and maybe a little concerned about. There's a lot of questions. ChatGPT attempts to synthesize a very broad database. Do you think future AI applications may be more useful if they are trained on a more specific data set?
They need to be trained on an appropriate data set.
Okay, good.
Look at Tim.
Exactly. That's it. Exactly what we're working on.
Meaning, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. So make me do this one short because this is in the next section. The training database has to be representative of the world or of construction contracts. And if the training database is not representative, then you're not going to get very good answers because, or you're not going to get very good results, whether you're predicting or classifying or whatever, because it's not. You could very easily ask it something that was not in the training base. I've got more to say, but let's hold off because that's one of the rhetorics. Okay.
Would you like any more questions at this point?
Do one more. We're 12:33. Do one more.
We'll do one more. For architectural practice, how do you anticipate AI, if it is used for design, will fit in with standard of care?
Whoa, Tim. That's you, my friend.
We'll talk about that a little bit when we talk about the applied analytics. But there are patterns of it's trained to understand what the standard of care expectation is. And that's what we want and in order to minimize risk and to make sure that the contracts measure up to the standard of care expectation, that is really what our goal is.
And in fact, we're starting to work on that. We certainly don't have it to market yet, but Tim and I and an architect on staff, subject matter expert, we're starting to work on that. It's a how do I say it, Tim? It's a complicated problem. That's what we love. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if we may, let's go to the next one, the next section. Okay. Are we there? Are you seeing artificial intelligence, rhetoric, and reality?
You're good. Yes.
Okay. Have three different sections here on rhetoric. And please understand, everything you see on my screen, I clipped it. I copied it straight from an article or an internet blog or something. I did not make these up. And they're from respectable media sources. They are not from tabloids, in the line at the grocery store. And these are some of my smarter than us. AI will be billions of times smarter than humans, and man needs to merge with it, whatever that means. I'm just going to let that one sit for a minute. This one was very recent. A Google engineer claims that his AI chatbot is sentient, meaning has emotions and feelings. When I read the article, it is true that the bot would, first of all, she had a very sultry voice, and the engineer was male. And so she had this very sultry voice that begged him not to turn her off, and that her greatest fear was that he would abandon her. You know, so she was saying, this goes to the morality, actually, does it? She had been trained to say that, but she was not sentient. She was not having those feelings. Do you remember Data on, what was it, Star Trek, The Next Generation? He was the computer and he was brilliant. And all he ever wanted was to have an emotion. And he tried to learn and he never could learn. But he could imitate having emotions, as he would do. That engineer was fired, by the way. Here are two similar ones. AI risk leading humanity to extinction. And this was just this weekend. This one came across my desk. 5 ways AI might destroy the world. Everyone could fall dead in a same second. This is just garbage. I'm sorry. This is beyond rhetoric. This is garbage. Now, I do believe AI can cause harm. Don't get me wrong. I do believe that there are all sorts of potential problems and ways it can cause harm, like social media, for instance. That's a good example. Social media has done us a lot of good, but has clearly caused a lot of harm. Look at gaming that is violent, you know, other technologies. But these headlines are they're what is it called? Clickbait. It's nothing but clickbait. And if you were to read the article, it's almost literally, for instance, the 5 ways. I read that article and it talked about how we human beings have driven rhinoceros to extinction, and AI somehow can drive us to extinction the same way. It did not say how, and they never really say how. They make these statements, but they don't say how. So be on alert. The reality is, here's some quotes from respectable sources. AI has truly amazing strides, but it still can exhibit the common sense of a 5-year-old. We've already talked about that one exactly. As a matter of fact, could bring about massive change, but business leaders need to see through the marketing hype. It's one of my favorite. AI, it's like an all-powerful, really painfully stupid genie. I'm old enough, maybe some of you are, to remember the show. What was it? I Love Jeannie. That's what it was. Remember what she?
I Dream of Jeannie.
I Dream of Jeannie. Thank you. She was always and trying to please her master with, couldn't I bring you a cup of coffee? You know, while he was. That's a good example. Painfully stupid. What do they mean by stupid? Out of context, inappropriate. And I used to work at United Healthcare, and a physician friend, I was charged with investigating Watson Health. Remember after Watson won Jeopardy? Okay. And so I had a physician friend, he goes, oh, Sandra, it is so painful. It is having an intern spouting inappropriate diagnosis. Why inappropriate? Because it's the encyclopedia, it's everything they have digested of diagnosis, but it has no context. It does not say, well, it does not consider this is a diagnosis for women, but this guy's a man. Okay, it's totally out of context. So what is reality? It really is this simple. AI is far better than humans at finding complex patterns in data. Once again, remember that slide I showed you with all the nodes and all the lines connecting them? A human being, research says, can hold 3, every human being can hold 3 things in their head, some can hold 7 in their head, maybe 9 or 10, and that's it. The AI can hold, well, ChatGPT has 175 billion of them in their head, so it's going to find those complex patterns in data, but it's far worse than human beings at understanding what was my Bloom taxonomy again: analysis, synthesis, and evaluation, and anything in context. Okay, my next rhetoric. Data scientists, there's a shortage right now of 160,000 open jobs right now for data scientists. And so enterprising entrepreneurs have said, you don't need a data scientist to create an AI or machine learning algorithm. You can do it yourself. It's been tagged the citizen data scientist. Well, let me ask you, and a citizen data scientist, by the way, requires no training, no experience. Would you like to get into an airplane with a citizen pilot? Meaning no training, no experience, but they've got a good piece of software, okay? Would you like to go to an oncologist, a citizen oncologist? It's got a great piece of software, but it's not a human being. I mean, it's ludicrous on the face of it, but you still see this stuff. This one is my favorite, meaning the most outrageous. It's right off a website. It says, use our software and point our tool at data. Go have a cup of coffee. See the bottom sentence there? And it will churn through millions of statistical calculations, and you don't need a data scientist. Well, what can I say? The reality is there's a lot that a data scientist does. Here are the 4 steps in general at a very high level of what you do for any machine learning or AI effort. Steps 1 through 3, especially number 2 and 3, take 85%. On average, 85%. Could be more, but never less than 75 or 80% to do number 2 and number 3. And that is the data. Back to the question about morality, back to the question about the architect, okay? It all comes down to item number 3, preparing your training data set. And in order to prepare it, you've got to know what your data looks like, okay? You got to know what are the anomalies, what are the outliers, why are they outliers? Is it because it's bad data? If it's bad data, if it's wrong, if it's a data entry error, we can throw it away. But if it's not a data entry error, we got to keep it in there because it represents reality. We got to deal with it, okay? And you got to prepare that training data set. Once again, it's not necessarily how big the training data set is, although in general, bigger is better, the training data set. But why is bigger generally better? Because you've got a better chance of it being representative of your population. The work that we do, we have a lot of contracts. For instance, we have a lot of contracts that we have extracted, okay? We don't know who said it, okay? But we've extracted that, and we have a data set with 890,000 change orders. I have a lot of confidence that that is representative of change orders in general. So these are the things that the human being does. In red is what the machine does. That's the fun part. That's the exciting part. That's the part that I wait days and months to get to. But it's just wrong. You do need people who are trained to do this, and typically those are data scientists. It's not an engineer. It's not a software engineer. That's different training, different skill set. Data scientists are trained in statistics at some level, okay? Data, how much data have you analyzed in the past? So it's quite skilled. Here's the third and last rhetoric that I'll bore you with. I don't know where this came. This is a direct quote. It was a book that someone handed me that I have lost, okay? But it's a direct quote. Don't worry about the data, just feed that algorithm anything, and that's what AI does. It figures it out. No, it's just like a child. You teach a child bad things, the child, the results, the child says bad things, does bad things. The same thing is true with ML and AI. You feed it garbage, you get garbage out. Okay. Hosty, 15 minutes, right on the nose. Do we want to do some more Q&A, or should we move directly to the last part and then?
Let's move directly to the last part. Okay. Tim agrees, and then we will.
Good idea. Okay.
Here we go.
Okay. Well, we'd like to talk.
I'm
Okay.
sorry.
I'm going.
Okay.
You hear me right? Okay. What I'd like to talk about is tell you a little bit about what we're doing with AI for construction contracts. The things that we're trying to improve are, as you see here, efficiency and accuracy, as well as improve workflow management. So we're trying to look at the patterns of how things were done and help you identify, alert you, do some risk assessment, and equal it with improved accuracy, because it's all about risk and making sure that what you put in that contract is accurate, and that you understand what you put in that contract so that you can address it during the life of a project. So that's kind of what our approach is and what we're trying to do. So if we go to the next slide. This is, and the key to what we're doing is a data-driven approach. The answers, the insights that we're providing to you are coming from learned projects and contracts in context. A school project is different than a retail project. Projects in California are different than projects in New York as far as what is required in order to understand what the contract needs to say and enforce in those two different environments. So we call a project profile. So we've taken all of the data from our millions and millions of contract documents, categorized them by projects, project profiles we call it, and then derived outputs from that can be customized to you and what you've done, as well as be able to look at across the marketplace. As I mentioned earlier, we're looking at helping you understand what your clause library is, the clauses that you've entered into the contract documents based on your experience and what is suitable for you. Every one of you has a different requirement for your business that you want to make sure that this is a standard that I want to apply. You can do it with a template, but there's also, individually, you also have a lot of different things that you do. So the system that we've used is allowing us to understand this project is like this profile, and therefore these are the things that you said are important, and therefore what you want to be able to put into your agreements. And then risk. Risk is the number one issue. We want to make sure that that risk is not overlooked and can be identified so that you can address the risk. And it looks at the modifications that you change, and what we're going to talk about is risk distribution, and how it evaluates the impact on the project, so that you're aware of it. And then maybe it is suitable. We're not designing a system to tell you what to do. We're making observations and showing you where the opportunities are to enhance and improve what you've done. If you can go to the next slide, because we are going through time pretty quickly. This is just and we refer to it as applied analytics. So what we're going to go through here, and after this, I'm going to flip it over to me so that I can show them some examples of some screenshots. But the applied analytics is determining standards and norms of contract terms and phrases. Again, those patterns that Sandra talked about. We're identifying your patterns and the patterns of the marketplace so that you can identify how you compare to those. I already talked about building types, variations in each of those building profiles. You have different variations in what you expect for liability, indemnity, local market law conditions, obviously, that New York versus California condition. We're trying to help, but part of what it can do is identify errors, places where someone made a mistake or inconsistencies. When you're talking about termination in a contract. If you talk about termination of one part of the contract one way and then in a different way in another part of the contract, you've made it ambiguous, and you will incur risk because of that ambiguity. Change orders we talked a little bit about, and it's all about time and cost. By looking at historical projects categorized by different profiles, what were the trends and patterns of change orders based on time, cost, and also the building system? What building systems impacted those change orders? So that you can learn from that, because there's so much information out there that for any one person to consume it, or not only that, people with experience are being moving forward to people that don't have experience. And what the ability here is going to be able to help give experience of history to new people doing these jobs. And again, identifying those normal patterns as an example for pay-apps and where to evaluate, how to identify abnormalities and be able to calculate different terms of what's going to happen because of the pay-app pattern. So if you could look it over to me, I'd like to show some of the examples that we have that we displayed at A23 this year. Show my screen. And just let me know that we are on that. You have my screen now?
Yes.
Asti? Okay, good.
Your screen.
So, and what we're envisioning that you're going to, that you would see in our products, I'll get this out of the way. There we go. And we're looking at this as a dashboard functionality. So it's got a functionality. This one happens to be looking at my usage. What kind of things that I change in my contracts so that I understand when I go in to do a new contract where the issues are going to be. Again, this is just a screenshot of a Figma of what the dashboard is going to look like, where you select a different profile of different kinds of buildings, locations and values. And then it gives you an output that says, here's the article, here's your projects, and here's the article where most of the changes have to be made. You can see here, it's just a color pattern. It shows you that the yellow ones are what they're parts of the document that you change very infrequently, but whatever these two kind of projects were here, you make a lot of changes to all the articles, as an example. And over here, as it's more impactful, is how often do you make those changes, which is the frequency, and then how much do you change it? Are you changing the entire content? Are you changing a lot of the content or a little of the content? And we're trying to help you, guide you, so that you can identify those patterns of your changes in the contracts that you've done in over your experience. Secondly, we take some of the information, and this is where we bring in our subject matter experts and get them to help you understand when you change our standard template clause, which is designed to be fair and balanced based on it, the way it's written, and make these changes to it, you're going to experience a different distribution of risk. And as an example, you increase it for the architect, but you haven't changed it for the other two because of the changes you made here. So we're using our subject matter experts to review content and learn the changes that were made and what the impact was of that. And literally also shows you the projects where you did this kind of change. So again, just a static view, just so you get some ideas. Change orders. We looked at change orders and looked at the patterns, and change orders are very pattern, time and cost trends of what happened to the project over its lifetime, when the change orders occurred, how much they were, and what you see here is actually an example of what building systems impacted change orders across different kinds of projects. So all of these are filterable to be able to say, hey, for this kind of a project, what should I expect? Looking at it by location and by size of projects are the two ways that we're looking at it. So with that said, we just wanted to give you an idea of how Katina is envisioning using AI to aggregate your data from your history, provide it into you in the tools that you can then use to improve the way you're doing business and provide insight and give you information. So with that said, if you can get me to stop share and go back to that. Any final questions? We've got about 5 minutes. I do want to say here, one of our purposes for this is to find out what kind of questions people have so that we can address them in future sessions and be able to build products that will be helpful for our clients and any of you who want to use our services. So Asti, anything else you got there?
Thank you so much, Tim and Sandra. Such an exciting session, so much information. And certainly I do think we have to have a part 2 and talk a little bit more about this and how this can be incorporated in contract administration. So obviously, as Tim has mentioned, AIA contract documents powered by Katina, we are working diligently to see how AI can be incorporated into our products and services. Tim, yes, if you could mute. So how we can incorporate AI to the benefit of our customers and users so that they can have the data analytics to better their processes, their contract documents. The fact that it could potentially look at for data and emissions throughout all of the contracts on a project, I think are very exciting, as are the historical change orders, payment apps for the customer themselves, as well as how they might compare to the industry. So very exciting things. We definitely want to have more education on this. While our presenters answer a few more questions, I will put our Learn page URL in the chat for everyone. Take a look at our Learn page. We have a lot of thought leadership, but we're developing a lot more articles and resources on AI and how it will factor into our industry as well as contract administration. So with that, I will put that in there. Let's go straight to questions. Will these data sets be available for practitioners outside AIA contracts use for general practice improvement?
I can answer that one. Yes, that is part of our planning as far as anonymized aggregated data. Anybody, contracts are contracts, they're very secure. We're going to the end of the security realm to make sure that any of our client data is secure and not available for anyone to use anything. But we do envision aggregated anonymized data that will be able to be used by third parties to evaluate trends and integrate into what their solutions.
He's got a hard job here.
There's so many questions. So this is, you want questions, you're going to get questions that we can also review for our next session. Does AIA practice anticipate the future use, enable identifying the human use issue related to number and type of changes and frequency to assist in targeting training needs?
And I'm going to say yes, absolutely. Not only we hope it's going to inform our content team on issues that, things that they haven't seen or things that need to be incorporated into our documents, and make them better. That absolutely that, and obviously the things that we see people doing, we can train them about them of why they should or should not do what they're doing. So yes, we are using the data in that respect.
We have a research note out there on change orders as well right now, Hosty. You might want to say.
The white paper, correct?
No, there's also a research note called the truth about change orders. And it's really quite revealing, because the common belief is that the number of change orders is what affects overtime and over budget. That's not what we found. We found that it's not the number, but it's the timing. It's pretty interesting. Yeah. And it also shows you some good analysis, that we're capable of.
Wonderful. And so I can also get that resource to participants of today's webinar, as well as I did put the Learn link of our Learn page. Please feel free to access for content, all your contract administration content needs, but a lot of information that we'll be uploading to AI, including, I think, part 2 is safe to say of this webinar. Please clarify the statement about the ability of an algorithm to validate data. Can that be done if the machine is trained properly?
And what do you mean to validate data? Well, it's not interactive. I mean, that's the common thing that we do, as a matter of fact, in general. In other words, we extract all the data from a contract, we put it into a database, and then if data is, let's say for indemnity value, is out of the typical range, we could let you know that. I'm not certain if that's what they mean by validate data, but
well, Sandra,
and the questioner did say that the statement was on Sandra's last slide. If you want to
The last slide, meaning, oh, be quiet. Not you.
prior to Tim's last portion.
The rhetoric slide, you mean? Garbage in is garbage out? Is that what you mean? If that's what you mean, you betcha. Okay. I mean, Tim and I spend our life doing that because we have to clean up a data set before we use it to train with. And so we're always looking at outliers. We're always looking at missing data and making a decision. Is that data a true outlier? If so, you don't throw it away because that represents reality. You always are trying to build a training data set that represents reality. But if it's, I mean, many times it's something as outrageous as, 10,000 billion for the value of a project, we throw that one away because that one is obviously wrong. So in that respect, oh yeah, we are validating data all the time, because if we did not validate the data that we then use to train the algorithms with, we would get wacky results because we got wacky data. So yeah.
So we are at the 3 o'clock hour. I want to thank our presenters for such an exciting, thoughtful presentation. There's a lot to reflect on. Again, to our audience, please visit our Learn page. We will plan the next webinar and set the date and registration page. You can find it there under upcoming trainings. We'll also be writing articles. There was a questioner that asked about the change order analysis. So again, you will be receiving the recording from today's webinar as well as the white paper, and we will try to get that analysis to you in that email as well as uploading it to our Learn page. So again, thank you both so much data and information in this webinar, and we're very excited to share, I think, with our customers and audience about how AIA contract documents will be incorporating AI and data analytics into our products so that we can all work more efficiently and smarter. So with that, thank you all for asking questions and for the presentation. And we look forward to more content related to AI and contract administration.
Thank you. Everyone have a good afternoon.
Thank you.